Hello and welcome, dearest friends of this here internet. This is again Mock, broadcasting live from within the chaos of reality itself. And I am back to react to some videos, work on some art, and just get things done. Today's stream won't be too long, but hopefully it won't be too short either. Ooh, just before I get started, I should probably check my internet connection. Today I am working on some fan art. I don't normally do fan art because it's not something that interests me. It's not something that catches my attention. But unfortunately, I have to get some attention, right? I have to figure out how it is that I can gain some recognition for myself, you know, make a name for myself. And fortunately or unfortunately, fan art is actually a pretty big way that people do gain some traction online. So that's what I'll be doing today. Sadly, it seems like my internet connection is very unstable and I don't know why. All right, so I mean, what else can we do? We're gonna just keep rolling with it. I'm trying to think of a quick way to fix it so that I don't have to completely start over. But I feel like if I go ahead and disconnect and reconnect, obviously it's going to kill the stream. So oh, okay. I think I just realized what the issue is. So recently I did some... Wait, what? Well, now I'm very confused. Recently I did some rewiring of my Wi-Fi network, my internet network at home. I actually finally hooked up my setup to a wired connection, and I should be on that wired connection, but sadly it's not acting like it. And quite frankly, I don't know how to tell. Normally you get an icon, right? You get an icon that lets you know, hey, you are in fact on a wired connection or a Wi-Fi connection off to the side of Windows, but I don't see it. And went ahead and I turned off the Wi-Fi so that, and there it goes. Okay, now we're rolling. No, we're not. It dropped again. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I don't understand what's happening. But so far the stream seems to be functioning. So I think I'll just let it be. And let it be we shall. YOLO. When there's not much else that you can do, the best that you can do is keep rolling. So, like I was saying, working on some fan art today. There's gonna be some fan art for Kirsha's birthday stream, which will be later today. Hopefully I'll get some, attention from that. Just because I'll be posting this online for people to see. I'm not all that great at posting my art online or, trying to get attention for it. So hopefully this will go well for me. And today I am going to be listening to a Skybrows song just because I've been listening to Skybrows. What would you say, fairly regularly. I really enjoy his lyrics and I really enjoy his I guess artistic vision is what you could call it. His artistic direction. Yeah, that's the proper term for it. And that's the holy ball, right?
Saturated, inundated, moderated, suffocated, not sealed, shifting blame, discord earned its name. Hate the cold machine, feeding on the same routine. Give me something I can feel through tin foil and stainless steel. Underneath the skin, where the rot begins. Give me something I can feel. Something.
Honestly, this beat is freaking amazing. I really like this beat. I really like fast music. I cannot have well, I also enjoy slow music, but I don't know how to describe it. Like, there are certain songs where you can tell they're meant to be sort of fast paced or meant to be sort of like high energy, but they're just not fast enough. They're not fast enough. They're not punchy enough. And this beat really like pumps me up.
Every weather in the head, every featherweight a ton. Noise scatters, mangled chatter, muddies matters on the screen. Tangled wires and channels, meaning severed, sick, obscene. Tripwire, violet circuit, watch the moderators race. Masked opinions just to fail to save the face. Now here, waiting for the sky to clear. Give me something I can feel. Certified and safely sealed. Underneath the skin, where the plot give me something I can feel. Something. More and more forms, more lore.
freaking hilarious too. The lyrics, give me something real, give me something I can feel. Meanwhile, Skybrow's out here making literal, well, what the masses would call AI slop, right? Synthetic, non-human generations that are not meant to feel real. And that's the funny part. Skybrow's content does feel real. It does feel genuine, but it's because of his art direction. It might not be physically made the way that I am physically making art today, but it feels real because he makes it feel real. He's the one in charge of the vision.
Acronymity, infinity, atrocity, affinity. Password is secure, but the words begin to slur. So cut the cord, break the cradle, watch it bleed. Dreamers lost and found common ground. Cast your seed into the field. Give me something I can feel with that deep fake sex appeal. Underneath the skin, where the truth sinks in. Give me something I can heal. Something real.
Also, what really helps to make his songs feel real is the fact that he utilizes a lot of references from modern culture, not just modern culture, but like culture that is currently actively being generated by the masses online. And that's what is most enjoyable for me when it comes to Skybrow's and other AI generated content online. It's the fact that it's being actively worked on, and it incorporates the topics and ideas that my ideological peers are currently discussing. So I really, really want to be able to listen to something, listen to music, and engage in some form of art that speaks to me now, and that sort of helps me better understand and helps me to better flesh out the ideas that I have today, rather than just, unfortunately, the typical generic ideas that are broadcasted in our average music, where it's just, you know, the usual topics of money and love and sadness. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we all feel those. I feel them too. I enjoy that type of music occasionally, but sometimes I need something about today, something about right now.
Something real. Set me free so I can be exactly how you wanted me.
So yeah, that was Skybrow's. Some of the best contemporary AI generated music around. There's a reason why a lot of people react to him. And it's because he is always pumping out something relevant to the times. You know what? You know what else I want to listen to right now? We need another fast pace for them. This one is K Crusader by Don P. Bongwater. Don P. Bongwater is another individual who's been making some AI generated lop, if you could call it that. And he has gotten a lot of really positive attention because, like Skybrows, he talks about contemporary topics that are happening right now, and he is very funny. He covers a lot of these strange topics in very fun and interesting ways.
Ketamine, K Crusader. I'm not so low. Yeah, I'm Lord Nooks and North. Laughing Rider drops means more. Turn the chaos into law. Hit record and start the war. Yeah, I'm Lord Nooks and North. Every joke a secret door. If you think you've seen it, all my billies always cry for more. Lord from Nooks and North. I dive into the lore. Fuck, I'm Nooks and North. You don't see my face. Living rent free in your green space. Every hot take like a raid on these safe place. Turn your faith trope to a meme, then I erase. I don't chase. Cloud I attracted. Drop on vid, whole feet goes frantic. Say touch grass, but I plant this. Tiny brain sub bomb. All the billies want more. Lord from Nooks and North. Yeah, I'm Lord Nooks and North. Laughing wild and Josh me more. Turn the chaos into lore. Hit record and start the war. Yeah, I'm Lord Nooks and North. Every joke a secret door. If you think you've seen it all, my bellies always cry for more.
Also, Don P. Bongwater is the only individual who ever makes Asmongold have just the right amount of hair. No one else can get it right. I don't know what it is, but no one else gets that hairline quite like Don P. Bongwater.
Bust that sound, that's me suplexing your career in the ground. Scroll of regrets on my browser tab. Turn every bad take to a golden gag. Click a title, yeah, twist that tag. Watch them all running and then leave just glad. I got lore in the comments, myths in the threads. People write essays about stuff that I said. I just sit tea while the drama spreads. Then drop one joke, everybody plays dead. Everyone is always wanting more. Lord from Lord, Nooks and North. Yeah, I'm Lord, Nooks and North. Laughing while the chat screams more. Turn the chaos into law. Hit record and start the war. Yeah, I'm Lord, Nooks and North. Every joke is seen to go. If you think you've seen it all, my billies always cry for more. From Nooks and North. K Crusader.
Alright, this is the live version. I more enjoy the old version. I feel like it's a little bit more hype. So that was that. In order to avoid getting in trouble with people for listening to their music on my live stream, I am going to keep it at that. Keep it at just AI music and not too many of them. So now we're going to get into another video. This one is, once again, Anton Petrov. I've reacted to his videos previously on the channel, and I really enjoy his work because he covers a lot of science topics, more specifically recent discoveries. And this one really caught my attention. I actually listened to this off stream, and it blew my mind to the point where I was like, I have to cover this on stream just so that I can sort of record my thoughts on it for the future. So, long story short, from what I remember, scientists were trying to figure out what exactly time is. So they conducted a few experiments, and it turns out time kind of isn't what we used to think it was. It doesn't really exist the way that most people conventionally understand time to exist. And I actually intuitively understood this several years ago. It never made sense to me how space travel affects time, and so I almost fell. For me, it was pretty clear that time didn't exist the way that we thought it did. It's not some kind of actual like universal like measurement system. It's not. It's well, that's not. That's not really what I mean to say. Give me a second. The issue is time isn't time the way that we think about it. It's not just linear. It's not, you know, start here and there. And it's not really as universal as we think it is. And so I immediately understood that time is likely just degradation over time, or degradation over duration. I don't even know how to properly explain it into words, but I understood that time was just the way that things sort of fall apart as they progress. And it seems like scientists have come to a similar conclusion. And this actually reveals a lot about, funny enough, well, scientists might not see it this way, but funny enough, I think personally this reveals a lot about what heaven is, or what it was, and it kind of helps explain how we can get there, or how we're supposed to actually get there.
Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and in this video we're going to be discussing a fascinating new experiment that might slightly change how we think about the fabric of space-time, the reality, and specifically the nature of time itself. And that's because for a relatively long time, physicists struggled with a kind of a major contradiction. Our daily reality of life shows time as something that flows from the past into the future, or basically it shows us a kind of a arrow of time. But our deepest equations of the universe don't actually include this external ticking clock and do not require any arrow of time to explain the universe we live in, which by itself creates a bit of a contradiction between what we're observing and what's being theoretically proposed. And so extremely recently, a team of scientists led by Professor Giovanni Bortini at the University of Birmingham created what they now refer to as a kind of a mini-universe, a tiny representation of the universe inside the laboratory setting that tries to tackle this exact problem and tries to explain this idea of time in ways we can maybe understand. But in this case, they did not create stars or galaxies, they created something much smaller and much colder, and something that's been used in a lot of experiments before. They used a Bose-Einstein condensate, something we're going to briefly discuss in a few seconds. And so here, by observing how this tiny system changed over time, and by measuring the flow of time inside of it, and in this case without using any actual clock, they were sort of able to show that time might be some kind of an emergent property resulting from the system's internal changes. And so just to kind of make sense of all of this, let's first discuss some of these individual concepts and then basically find out what this experiment shows us.
So from what I understand, basically time is not a cause, it is an effect. It is not an external force. It is not a thing that acts upon you. Rather, it is a consequence of what is going on in reality. As reality progresses, time is essentially created by reality.
But before we dive into this mini-universe, we need to understand these two main concepts, Bose-Einstein condensates and the idea of entropy. And so what exactly is a Bose-Einstein condensate, very often referred to as a BEC? Well, scientists sometimes refer to this as the fifth state of matter. So basically not liquid, not gas, not solid, and not plasma, but a BEC state. And this is when you take a gas of certain atoms, in this case very often rubidium-87 atoms, and cool them down almost to the absolute zero. And well, at this point something strange starts to happen. The atoms lose their individual identity and begin to overlap, merging into a single superatom, or to be more exact, a giant quantum wave, which then allows scientists to see quantum mechanical effects by physically observing them with the equipment in the lab. This is something that has been recreated many times and was even created on the International Space Station a few years back. But the second concept here is entropy, and that's maybe a little bit more difficult to explain, even though it's basically just chaos or disorder. But entropy is actually the measurement of this disorder that technically measures the spread of energy inside a system. And while according to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy in an isolated system almost always increases over time.
And the way that I understand entropy within my own, you see, that's the thing. I have a view of the world that is like equal parts science and equal parts ancient religion. So my view on the world is a bit strange. The way that I understand entropy to be is essentially sin. It is the force that was born into the world at the fall. When the fall happened, it caused all living things and all matter to essentially experience a sort of degradation that only seems to accelerate over time. And I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that, or actually this test, these experiments that we're talking about today did reveal that at the beginning of the universe everything was timeless. Time didn't really seem to exist, so everything was just kind of frozen in time. And to me that intuitively makes sense, right? Heaven would be a timeless place. It would be a state in which things are essentially, everlasting. And according to, our religious scriptures, after the fall, the people and the aspects of creation have only experienced some sort of degradation over time. Things used to last much longer. Things used to live much longer. And nowadays, their lifespans, their duration, their persistence has been shortened. And that is entropy.
And it's really this increase in disorder that seems to be the only thing in fundamental physics that gives us a very specific direction, or this arrow of time. Or basically in physics we can define time as a direction of increase of entropy. Although my apologies for not really explaining entropy very well, because it is a relatively complex topic that basically deserves its own video. That will probably come out really soon because I've been working on this for several years now. But for now though, let's move on. Let's discuss the problem of time. Or basically, why did scientists even need this mini-universe to study this? Well, it's really because of something referred to as Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which is a major part of quantum gravity and tries to combine the rules of the very small things, or the quantum mechanical things, with the rules of something very large, such as black holes or other objects from the general relativity. And the problem here is that this equation describes the entire universe as a kind of a stationary, unchanging state, where time doesn't actually exist as any kind of a parameter. As a matter of fact, as you can see in this equation, there is no t, no time at all. And if the universe is everything there is out there, there cannot be any clock outside of it in order to tell it how to change. Or just to rephrase this, if this describes the actual universe, then where exactly is the time? It cannot just exist outside of it. Which leaves scientists with a huge question. If the universe has no built-in clock, how do we actually get the idea of before and after that we basically experience every single day? And that's why this mini-universe experiment was designed. And so to test this, the Birmingham team created a simplified version of the universe by making a cloud of approximately 24,000 rubidium atoms behave in a somewhat unusual way, and they did this by trapping them using lasers and magnetic fields. That's basically the machine you see in this picture. And then they used a very thin barrier of light to divide this cloud into two separate parts, a kind of a bright sector that they were able to directly observe and measure, and the dark sector that remained unobserved. And while the atoms in this particular universe were able to move back and forth across this barrier, allowing things to change just a little bit. And as atoms moved between the bright and the dark sector, the overall volume of these regions would expand and contract. Or to be more exact, the size of the bright region would change just a little bit. And this expansion and contraction was actually kind of mimicking the idea behind the Big Bang, followed by a kind of a big crunch, or the expansion and the contraction of this mini-universe. In other words, by literally doing absolutely nothing, researchers made this particular mini-universe behave in a very unusual way that we kind of observe in the real universe as well. But importantly, researchers wanted to do one thing here. They actually wanted to see if they can maybe describe the order of events in this system, or how the events happened in this bright sector. For example, what happened first, what happened next, without looking at the external clock in the laboratory, and by using the system itself. And for this, they used the idea of entropy. And so by measuring the dispersion and the number of atoms moving between the bright and dark sides, they created a kind of an entropic time, with this graph basically showing us how this entropic time seemed to progress. And so what exactly did all of this help us discover? Well, here the results were actually kind of remarkable. First, they found that this entropic time was an extremely robust way to track the progression of events inside this mini-universe. In other words, by using the idea of entropy, it was possible to kind of keep track of things even without an external clock. With the main discovery suggesting that time is indeed internal, or basically the experiment proves that time can be defined by the internal changes of a system and not an external clock, and proving that the arrow of time is real after all.
Yes, it is real. The issue is it's not the way, it's not actually what we think it is. It's not, you know, the passage of time. Time is not the passage of time. Time is the progression of entropy.
Because even as this mini-universe expanded and contracted, going through these Big Bang, Big Crunch cycles, the entropic time only moved in one direction and gave the entire system a clear arrow from past to future. But there are also some additional discoveries that are maybe just a little bit surprising and do have some implications for our universe. First, they noticed that the entropic time didn't always flow at the same rate. It seemed to flow faster when entropy was being exchanged quickly, and even completely stopped if no changes were happening.
Yes, because if nothing is happening, nothing is interacting. If there is no motion, if there is no exchange of information, the likelihood for entropy to be generated goes down to essentially zero. The more that we interact with one another, the higher the probability that something is going to go wrong at some point. The more that I try to discuss my ideas, the more that I try to understand, the higher the likelihood that there will be a misunderstanding, that I will get my ideas out there in an understandable way, and so that's essentially what sin is. It is the breakdown of these ideas, the breakdown of concepts, and the breakdown of relations. So if nothing is happening, these ideas are not being exchanged between two separate entities, between two individuals, between two independent forms. Once that information starts to be exchanged back and forth, some of it gets lost, some of it gets damaged, some of it is misunderstood, and that misunderstanding, that breakdown, the errors is what sin is. It's the missing of the mark.
And in their experiment, if the system reached a state referred to as the heat death, where everything becomes basically more or less uniform, time effectively ceased to exist. Or basically the whole universe kind of froze in time. Now exactly what this means for our universe is of course still kind of debatable, but this is definitely an intriguing observation. And
It means that whatever is at the end of our generation, whatever is at the end of our simulation, is eternity. At some point we will come to the end of reality, and the creator's intent will be fulfilled, and then we'll just enter a a state of timelessness.
there's also discovery in regards to quantum consistency. Here the team was even able to write a version of the Schrödinger equation, the fundamental equation from the quantum physics, using this internal entropic time instead of normal time. And it actually successfully predicted how the atoms would behave. In other words, even the quantum effects inside the system seem to behave in a very similar way how we expect them to behave in the real universe as well. But I guess the main question is, so why is this important? Or why spend so much time and effort to measure time without a clock? Well, the main reason is that this experiment provides a controlled testbed for the most difficult theory in cosmology. And that's because for decades ideas about how time emerges was mostly based on mathematical propositions and were more or less impossible to test. Mostly because we cannot just go and observe things from outside of the universe and cannot test anything in that way. But it also suggests that our idea of time or our experience of time is not some kind of an absolute and is not something that's dictated by something else from outside. As a matter of fact, it's not even some kind of an underlying property of the universe, and instead seems to be a relational property. Or basically something that emerges because different parts of the universe are interacting and exchanging energy and information. And if the universe was very simple and nothing actually happened in it, or basically if nothing ever changed, time would not be just slowing down or standing still, it would simply not exist. Without entropy, there would be no arrow of time. With this experiment supporting the idea that the universe is essentially a kind of a closed quantum system. A system where the total state does not seem to change, but for things inside this system, time then appears to exist because individual subparts of the system start to interact and start to exchange energy and entropy. Or just to rephrase this in, I guess, more understandable terms, it's kind of like being inside a movie where the entire film reel already exists all at once and has already been made. But as the light passes...
Hey, guy, he kind of confused me with this because I don't know exactly what he means. If I think he means what he means, that is very, very interesting. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to listen, I'm going to try to pay attention, I'm going to try to make sense of this.
State does not seem to change, but for things inside the system, time then appears to exist because of time. With this experiment supporting the idea that the universe is essentially a kind of a closed quantum system. A system where the total state does not seem to change, but for things inside the system, time then appears to exist because individual subparts of the system start to interact and start to exchange energy and entropy. Or just to rephrase this in, I guess, more understandable terms, it's kind of like being inside...
Yep, I just... Oh my... Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just realized, okay. So, for a very long time I've had this concept. That the way that the creator, God, the one who is in charge of the simulation, knows everything and is able to control everything, and the issue is he doesn't control everything, right? He knows everything. He has set forward the big picture plan. He holds everything in his hands. The reason why he is timeless and he is outside of the simulation is due to exactly this. The only ones experiencing time, the only ones living inside of the relation of that information exchange, that interaction is us. Everything outside is completely unfazed, and that seems to be the purpose of our creation, right? To experience time, to experience these relational interactions. And this seems to validate to me that in fact all of reality has already been written. All of reality has already happened. And it is only us within reality who are experiencing it being formulated in real time.
The movie where the entire film reel already exists all at once and has already been made. But as the light passes through individual frames in the film, we then start getting a kind of a story with the beginning and the end visible to the audience.
Yes, and so the way that I sort of intuitively understand reality is everything's already happened, everything's already written, everything's already done. We live in some kind of weird multi-dimensional time space where basically everything is happening, has happened, and will happen all at once. But it is us inside of this moment right here, right now, who are experiencing the passage of time and experiencing the cascading effect of the we're the only ones experiencing the cascading effect of the consequences of the actions that we take right now in this moment. But in reality, there is no time. There is no difference between me today and me 20 years ago. Those two individuals are existing at the exact same time. And it is only me right here, right now, who can differentiate between those two, who is living life differently. Because me right here, right now, has a different relation to me 20 years ago.
So definitely an exciting experiment and some really intriguing implications. But naturally, this approach of using mini-universes can also help us discover and understand other unusual principles as well. For example, studying exotic objects like black holes, or even trying to figure out the exact conditions that existed during the actual Big Bang, could possibly also be explored by using these tiny mini-universes with Bose-Einstein condensates and using setups that are not so different. In other words, all of this shows us that we don't really always need these massive telescopes like the James Webb to try to understand the cosmos and to try to figure out our place in it. Because sometimes the secrets of the entire universe can also be discovered in a tiny cloud of atoms, cooled down to some of the most extreme temperatures. But because this is such a complex research and because there are still a lot of unanswered questions, there is obviously still a lot we don't really understand about quantum mechanics, and more importantly, how gravity seems to fit into this story as well. Which means that we'll definitely come back and discuss this more in some of the future videos. And on that note, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, support this channel on Patreon where you can find additional videos without any ads and can DM me directly, or by joining a channel membership that grants you early access. You can also support this channel by buying the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye bye.
Yeah, we need I need to get my hands on that t-shirt for sure. Once again, that was Anton Petrov. He makes a lot of amazing videos on the current discoveries, current scientific discoveries and mathematic discoveries being made basically like, you know, every other day at this point. We're constantly learning something new about our reality and its properties. And okay, I might be speaking about this from a what could be seen as a bit of a mumbo jumbo point of view. But he is nothing like that. Every single one of his videos is exactly like this. He just tells you exactly what is being studied and how it's being studied, and he does his best to sort of help the audience understand the implications of these studies and these results, and help educate people on the science, the actual science. So I really enjoy his videos, and he makes them like super regularly. Let's go see his channel real quick. Yep. 16 hours ago, 20 hours ago, 1 day ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. He's making these daily, sometimes even more. So he has countless videos for anyone to binge. It is really amazing. Should I watch this? You know what? We'll save this for last. We'll see if we have time for this one. Oh, right. This is the opening to the new Ghost in the Shell series by Studio... What the hell is the name of the studio? I honestly don't remember. It was the studio who animated Dandadan, but I can't remember what the hell it's called. Oh my gosh, as I was typing out the question, I immediately remembered it's Science Saru. Science Saru is animating a new Ghost in the Shell series. I really like the art style because it looks like the original manga, and this is the opening to that series, which I am very excited for. Has it already come out? I'm very excited for it, but I don't even know if it's come out yet. It already came out. No, wait. Yeah, it already came out. July 7th. Jeez, why am I not on that? 3 days ago, and I haven't watched it yet. Jeez, we were disconnected, and now we've been reconnected. Hopefully, I mean, yeah, looks like we're still running, so my internet continues to be unstable. I don't know why, but we'll just keep going, I guess. Like I was saying, these backgrounds look almost like they're traditionally animated. They look really beautiful. I wonder what that alligator / crocodile was all about. How do you, ah, there it is. Okay. I was trying to figure out how to go back frame by frame. Okay, figured it out. Yeah, it's just a giant inflatable crocodile. Interesting. Those are some really good vocals. And these are some really awesome visuals.
欠陥だらけの赤とでもかけがえない記憶
The sparkle feels so retro. That feels so old school. That's like 80s graphics. That's literally like some 80s movie graphics. That's crazy.
の全てを私を渡して
I feel like they should have put a little bit more flair into the design of the logo. But I'm not upset by it. I like the liquid metal, the ghost in the shell in the background. Sorry, in the bottom. But the kanji on top just looks very plain.
全てを私を渡して出してよ
Yo. That feels so old school. That looks really awesome. This is New York, right? I might be wrong, but this immediately feels like New York. I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit to make sure, again, that I don't accidentally trigger something. I think there's fine. The Tachikoma looks so good. I really love the Tachikoma. Whoa, what the hell? That was really fast. What is this giant building over here? That looks amazing. Yo. It's so funny that they gave him his old design back. He really just looks like a monkey. Like they just went with it. They're like, you know what? Give it to him. This looks amazing. So much detail. I really like the character designs. Why does... Okay, I was gonna say, why does he look so much more detailed than the other characters? Maybe because it's a close-up? Close-up shot? No, he just looks like that. He just has more detail than the other characters. They look so cool here. Bato looks so silly. I like some of his newer designs, but I mean, this is just classic. That guy looks so Italian. Not gonna elaborate any further. Ooh. Where is it at? That looks awesome. A tank Tachikoma? Who is that? The what's his name? The freaking jeez, I don't even remember anymore. The guy who takes over everybody, right? The guy, you know the guy. Come on, what was his name? Bless me. The Puppet Master, right? I Yo! Those colors are crazy. Why'd they give him mouths? They look really cute though. Yo, that's crazy. The landscapes look really, really good. They put a lot of work into them, you can tell. I think that animation is pretty smooth. Like, what the hell? They all just like really cute. Yo, what was that though? Camouflage? Yeah, it looks like some optical camouflage, right? Yeah, he's hella blurry. Damn, that was it. Well, that's over. So yeah, I really need to get on that. I'm 3 days late. It's already released. I need to start watching the new Ghost in the Shell. One more video. This one by Mentis Wave, who always has some really great insights on economics and philosophy and politics. He seems to really research. He seems to really research well the topics that he covers, and his videos are always full length. Nothing like 5-minute, TikTok breakdowns. So I really enjoy Mentis Wave. Oh right, I forgot. This video is titled Communists Won't Stop Falsely Accusing Everyone of Being a Nazi. And here's why. So on screen we see an economic system based on government ownership of the means of production positively requires a totalitarian dictatorship. Unfortunately, that is true, right? If you want to have complete control of the economic system, there really isn't any other way than to be a totalitarian, to have your hand in literally everything that goes on. And fortunately, that is why capitalism works, because it doesn't require someone to be constantly over your shoulder. And people are just allowed to conduct commerce freely.
Hey internets, the time has come for another BreadTube/Communist Tube refutation video. So one particularly bad argument, which is really more of just a bad rhetorical tactic that still somehow persists today in 2026, is of course the disingenuous tactic of just simply accusing everybody you disagree with of being a Nazi, or Newtsies as I like to sometimes say, just to drive home the silliness of the argument. And very silly it is indeed, because the accusation is almost always false. And the interesting thing is that, again, we're in 2026, and most people are aware that these accusations are usually false. Even apolitical people in the Pacific Northwest here, even the normies kind of know these days that accusing someone of being a Nazi, or literally Hitler, is not really a serious argument. It's just a rhetorical political tactic that doesn't necessarily have any basis in truth, and of course the normies tend to know this as well. Everyone just kinda knows that most of the time calling someone a Newtsie is just a way to smear them. It's barely...
My favorite way of saying it is Nubsy.
was that most of the time calling someone a newtsie is just a way to smear them. It's barely any different than just a general insult, except in addition to being an insult, it tries to justify hand-waving away what is being said. Or on the more extreme end of things, a way to justify being violent towards their target. And people are again largely aware of this. Argumentum ad Hitlerum is probably the #1 fallacy that in the last 5 years has significantly lost its bite. It's a grift that you'd like to think has run its course, and yet people still continue to engage in this disingenuous tactic. And so
That is so tiring, though. The fact that people keep doing this, and we all know it's dumb. We all know it has nothing to do with the discussions at hand. It just wastes so much time.
I'm going to do for you all in this video is I'm going to go over a recent video from Second Thought, where he tries to answer the question why the White House won't stop posting Nazi propaganda, and we'll be going over it to answer the different question, which is the question of why it is that communists won't stop falsely accusing everyone they disagree with of being fascists. But first, I'm not going to be selling anything for this video, but I would like to point out that for my questions and answers videos I do give priority to my channel members and Subscribe Star members. So if you want
Clear the way!
Really? I don't even play Marvel Rivals. I don't even like Marvel Rivals. I tried it. I just couldn't. I couldn't get into it. The controls, the movement, I don't know. Just didn't feel good to me.
This is Adolf Hitler's My New Order, the sequel to Mein Kampf. In it, you'll find a collection of Hitler's most famous speeches. And if you're wondering where to find it, don't bother with a local bookstore. You can start with the president's bedside table. According to a 1990 interview in Vanity Fair, that's where Ivana Trump frequently saw her then husband, now president, put this little number down after reading it, quote, from time to time. Okay, but actually there is something we need to talk about first.
Oh my
No one thinks
dog.
that Trump just reading this book or other normal things like getting Heil Hitlered by his friends is actually incriminating. So why then is the White House swimming in Nazi propaganda?
So yeah, the start of his video and the start of his argument may, at first, on the surface, seem very bizarre indeed. Why on earth would he make a bad argument and then immediately roll it back and call it out as a bad argument, but then not actually explain anything as to why it's a bad argument? Because indeed, saying that Orange Man, or anybody at all for that matter, is literally Bad Mustache Man, based entirely on the fact that he read the sequel to Mein Kampf, is a very nonsensical argument indeed. And yet, I often see people make the argument over and over and over again, and it's been debunked over and over and over again. It's a very silly association fallacy. Reading something obviously does not mean that you believe everything that you read.
What are you talking about? I just read, never mind. I just read Morning Glory Milking Farm. I agree with everything that happened there. By the way, I did not know. I don't think I ever would.
Personally have read Leviathan. I have read Karl Marx on Das Kapital. I have read Rothbard's Anatomy of the State, and yes, I have indeed read Mein Kampf. Now, anybody who's read these 4 books, you probably see the immediate problem here. All 4 of them paint a very different picture on how the power structures of society works, and what, if any, exploitation exists, along with very different ideas of how society works. TLDR, it's not really possible to believe everything in all 4 of these books. At least not with severely contradicting yourself on multiple levels. Reading these books will not turn you into some kind of Newtzy ANCAP Hobbesian commie. That is very much not a thing. As opposed to using your sense of reason to determine what is and what isn't true from the books that you are reading, which absolutely is a thing. In fact, it's a very, very common thing. And Second Thought seems to understand this, and yet he makes the silly argument anyway, only to, again, immediately walk it back. Now, whether he himself is just memeing here, I do have some insight in general why people sometimes do this, which is that it's a way to kind of gain the benefit of a rhetorical argument without fully committing to it. Because while some people are plenty smart enough to see right through that kind of association fallacy, a lot of other people, sadly, are just not. Because a quick look around the internet, you'll find out that one of the things Second Thought said there, which is that nobody believes this, well, actually, around the internet, plenty of people do believe this. A lot of people actually do fall for this association fallacy. A lot of people really will say, oh, he read Hitler, therefore that's additional evidence for why we should consider that this person is a Newtzy. It is extremely common. And so what's really going on here is he's doing a Motte and Bailey disguised as said said association fallacy. He makes the bad argument and then immediately retreats to the mot, so that way he can fool the people who fall for the bad argument while maintaining an intellectual facade in the faces of people who would call the bad argument out for why it is bad. It's very, very disingenuous. It's a trick designed.
It's a bad argument. That's why I'm not actually making it, despite the fact that I am going to discuss it in detail and tell you exactly how I would support the argument if it were good, but I'm not supporting it.
To fool a very specific type of person while pretending that you're not. But anyway, let's look at a few of the examples of the so-called Newtzy propaganda that the White House has been reposting. We'll have our home again. Join ICE. America needs you. Join ICE now. A heritage to be proud of, a homeland worth defending. American progress. John Gast. From the Department of Homeland Security or Department of Labor. One homeland, one people, one heritage. Remember who you are, American. And your nation calls. Yeah, so it's kind of obvious where he's actually going here, which is an argument that really isn't much better than the one that he just pretended to not actually believe, but stated it anyway. The issue with it here is it's always based on an extreme oversimplification of what specifically fascism is. Fascism is much more complicated than simply having a nation state and having a national identity. And whether you agree with that concept of national identity or agree with ICE or not, the reality is that what it is doing is pretty much.
The funny thing is it's literally just short for National Socialists. And somehow these people always ignore the fact that socialist is literally baked into the name.
Concept of national identity or agree with ICE or not, the reality is that what it is doing is pretty much what every nation has been doing for a very long time. In fact, Trump's immigration policy would probably be considered pretty open if we were to go back into the mid-1900s during World War II and look at America's immigration policy back then. By comparison, things would actually be considered less radical, and yet America was fighting against the literal Newtsies. And that's because there's again very distinct differences. Fascism includes total state control over society. It's the idea that the people are actually owned by the state and are servants to the state. And this includes a heavily state-controlled economy and usually a heavily militaristic and expansionist foreign policy. So it's more than just we love our country and we want to secure our borders. That is again just an oversimplification. It's more like our nation is superior, our state is superior, and so we must dominate and control the lesser inferior nations in order to have a stable world. And then finally it tries to remake society top-down under one infallible, unquestionable leader. And so by seething about ICE, what they're really doing here is they're just creating a straw man where they're seething over one specific policy which has some similarity to actual National Socialists. But the thing is, you need more than just that one thing. You need the
socialist part.
whole package. You can't just say, oh, literally mustache man breathed air and you're breathing air, therefore you're literally that mustache man. You need more than just one thing. And at that point, it's also important to point out what this video doesn't really talk about, which is how fascism rejects the individual and has a largely collectivist framework of society. That is, of course, because Second Thought himself is a literal commie. So he doesn't actually disagree with that concept, and by admitting it, he's actually committing a case of special pleading. And I'll have more on that later, because there's another very important thing that you have to go over before moving on, which is that not only is this a straw man, and not only is it a special pleading because he's a commie, but also this is a false dichotomy. You absolutely can have some kind of cultural identity without a state. For example, you have the Orania Project. Or to put an oversimplification of Rothbard's essay on nations by consent, you can have something being such thing as an our nation and having it actually be completely within individualist philosophy. It just has to be by consent. It has to have a freedom of association contract both ways. All parties have to mutually agree to be a part of the R. And so this idea that identity itself can be inherently Newtsy, well, that's just nonsense. Because identity absolutely can still work as long as it makes sure to put the individual first. That is the difference between a covenant and a commune. You absolutely could have a covenant community with private borders so long as everybody is consenting to be a part of that community and the rules of that community are agreed upon by the individual through contract. And this kind of philosophy is just completely missing from Second Thought's video. He doesn't bring it up or really question it much at all. And so the argument being made here is pretty much that borders is when Newtsy, which is just not accurate. Newtsy is much more complicated and includes much more things than just borders, and borders don't even necessarily have to be state borders. And with just that understanding alone, you can kind of just reject Second Thought's entire video on its face. But there's actually a lot more here, specifically some interesting things that a lot of people miss with communist propaganda. So let's continue on going over this clip next.
The DHS Twitter account has had a similar problem. Recently, they've used lyrics from a white nationalist song as promotional material, as well as a neo-Nazi slogan, and
What song? I like how we just kind of pointed it out, but like no sources, no references, nothing. Like, hello guys, something, right? What song is it? How do the lyrics stack up? What are we talking about? Are we literally saying nothing?
from a white nationalist song as promotional material, as well as a neo-Nazi slogan.
I would need to know more about this one. They are saying that the post of this image from the Homeland Security account on Twitter, the poster reads, "America needs you, join ICE now," but the post is captioned with "Which way, American man?" And they're saying that that relates to a book titled "Which Way, Western Man?" By a supposed white supremacist. The issue is, unfortunately, we would have to find out more about this individual, because a lot of people nowadays are labeled white supremacists. Unfortunately, what these people have done is they've completely muddied these terms and completely diluted them to the point where now if you hear someone called a Nazi, the first thing intuitively that you think is, well, how did they piss off the mainstream? And that's it.
And so has the DOL's Twitter. More material, as well as a neo-Nazi slogan, and so has
this is not the same. Jeez, one homeland, one people, one heritage. Yes, we're talking about culture, right? People, heritage, homeland, the things that we all share as people. Remember who you are, American. Yeah, the American culture, the American homeland, the American people. This is not talking about over here on the right-hand side where it says 13th of March, 1938. One people, one empire, one leader. No, we don't want an empire. We don't want a leader. We want a common culture.
as the DOL's Twitter. More than once.
The issue is that everyone believes the statement. America is for Americans, Germany is for Germans, Africa is for Africans, Europe is for Europeans, America is for Americans, Australia is for Australians, Asia is for Asians. I mean, I don't think anyone actually disagrees with this. If we did in fact disagree with this, then we would be pro conquest, wouldn't we? We would be pro colonialism. We would say, no, these lands don't actually belong to the people who settled there and made a civilization there. These lands simply belong to whoever is willing to come in and take it.
More than twice.
This is exactly the same thing again.
And then once more back.
Everything's so muddy. I don't even want to give this the time to like read through. This is so dumb. Okay, I'm gonna have to. Did the Department of Homeland Security just tweet out a Nazi dog whistle? This is an actual article over on a website titled ZEIEO. I don't even know what the hell this is. So it asks, did Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security just tweet out not so coded Nazi rhetoric? On Wednesday, the agency posted a picture of John Gast's 1872 painting American Progress. The piece, which hails the genocide of indigenous people in the US, was accompanied by a short message from the DHS. A heritage to be proud of, a homeland worth defending. American Progress, John Gast. How the hell is this a Nazi dog whistle, you freaking idiots? People are really dumb. I don't even... What can I say?
Back on the DHS account. For months now, we've seen post after post using white supremacist, far-right, and at times even outright Nazi rhetoric. The White House has called immigration an invasion, called the opposition wicked and evil, made Trump and ICE out to be irreproachable, called themselves the heirs to the Roman Empire, and implored their supporters to defend a declining, i.e. less white, nation.
Okay, so what we
I.e. Yeah, who added that in? You yourself. What are you talking about? You freaking idiots, bro.
To defend a declining, i.e. less white, nation.
Okay, so what we just listened to, in addition to just further doubling down on this combination of association fallacies with an oversimplification of what fascism is, and basically just arguing that Nutsi is when IDPOL and border defense, and pretty much again that's just his entire argument, you may have noticed something else in addition here right at the end of that little spiel, which is the absolutely massive element of projection that's happening here. Because earlier on in his video, one of the clips that Second Thoughts shares, as evidence of alleged Nutsiism, is a clip from Charlie Kirk's funeral. And if you're plugged into politics and news at all, you of course know that Charlie Kirk was assassinated for his beliefs, with the motivation for that assassination arguably being the fact that he was smeared for being a Nutsi. And while Second Thought isn't outright coming out and condoning that assassination, and condoning political violence, he doesn't outright say it, there's definitely a little bit of a wink wink nudge nudge implication going on here. Because here he is complaining about Orange Man demonizing his opponents, and yet the entire point of this video is for Second Thought to demonize his opponents. The whole
Yeah. And all with baseless claims. What do you call it? You don't even remember what it's called. Baseless claims, far reaches on implications, and just a bunch of nonsense, really.
implication here is, oh, you're a Nutsi, and Nutsis are the ultimate bad guys because we live in a post-World War II origin story, and Nutsis were the bad guys, and therefore any action against those we deem as Nutsis is therefore justified. That's effectively what's being implied here, not outright stated, but really how else are we supposed to interpret this? Because it's not really a big secret. In fact, it's actually one of the most well-known grifts of the far left. Step 1, give rhetoric of why you shouldn't be tolerant of Nutsis, and why violence against them is justified. Step 2, demonize your political opponents as Nutsis. And that's why him whining about Orange Man, bringing up Chuck Schumer with this silly little meme about the Democratic Party being dead and satanic and whatever. I mean, yeah, it's kinda dumb, but Second Thought is effectively doing the same thing with his entire video. And keeping that in mind, let's continue on to the next clip, which by the way happens right after he points out Orange Man and the little Schumer meme about the Democrats being evil. Here we go.
This is all very Nazi stuff, of course, and it should...
Yo, the low IQ. I can't take it anymore. I hate this so much. This is all very Nazi stuff. Like, what are you talking about, bro? I hate it when people just tell you, oh, yeah, this is clearly bad. This is so bad. Okay, well, what's bad about it? Well, can't you see? It's obviously bad. Like, please, muster up a couple of brain cells and explain yourself. Do a little bit of research. Something, anything.
Wouldn't surprise us too much from a government that's had 1, 2, 3, 4, and who could forget 5. Oops, there's a Nazi in our ranks. Moments.
Oops.
Who could forget 5. Shouldn't surprise us too much from a government that's had 1, 2.
Again.
Nazi stuff, of course. And it shouldn't surprise us too much from a government that's had 1.
And it goes by so fast. You don't even have time to explain. You don't take the time to explain. The audience has no time to react and inform themselves. Again, these are just allegations. Where do we have the actual evidence?
2.
Are you f***ing kidding me, bro? At least educate us. Isn't that the point of this video? Again, where's the actual information? Where's the information?
3, 4.
You freaking! I'm not even gonna pause anymore because all of these are just screenshots of literal article headlines. There is no information here.
And who could forget 5. Oops, there's a Nazi in our ranks. Moments.
Yep, that's right. He immediately goes into some additional random accusations of some people being Nazis. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, each of the examples he just spat out in rapid succession there could easily use their own explanation, but the TLDR of it is he's lying. That's pretty much it. He's just not telling the truth. The easiest one to refute, though, is probably just Elon Musk. False Nazi accusers always love to post a still image of this, or just the video of Musk doing that salute out of context, while completely ignoring the actual speech that Musk gave, which was about humanity going to space and Doge and reducing government spending, which is all pretty normal, fairly milquetoast, inoffensive liberal conceptions of free market discourse. And yet I've noticed that far-left progressives, they love to pretend like Elon's speech was about rounding up all the undesirables into death camps, which of course is not what his speech was about. But again, they don't say that. They don't actually make that argument. They just imply it by taking it out of context and then not elaborating further. They're just like, yep, there's a salute, he's a Nazi, and that's it. Unless, of course, they are actually considering his speech, in which case they're wanting to make the argument that the free market is somehow Nazi, which surprisingly is very close to what Second Thought says next. Behold this clip.
In his book Disaster Nationalism, Richard Seymour writes that the only thing the far right can actually deliver is adrenaline and revenge. Not happiness, not solutions, just anxiety and the...
Not happiness. I can't take it anymore. How long is this video? I'm only halfway through.
immediate relief of, quote, a shot of confidence and a thrill of collective hate. That's because in every single far-right regime, the arc of history looks the exact same.
True.
First, they hijack the rhetoric of other political parties, particularly the left. As the opposition, the far-right promises to solve the problems of the middle and lower classes that are ignored by the establishment. Poverty, low wages, inflation, the far-right promises these things can be solved, but not with radical change, only with radical violence. And it all...
Isn't that the same thing? Violence is a form of change, isn't it?
always fails.
Yep, that's right. We have now reached the right wing is when bad thing, left wing is when good thing part of the argument. This
Genuinely, I might have a headache after this video.
is the point of his video where we've kind of just completely left the realm of reality. Because there is valid criticism you can throw towards ICE. There are, in fact, some good arguments and some valid criticism to be made there. He didn't really make those good arguments, but they do exist. But instead we've...
The issue isn't even that he didn't make the arguments. He's not even trying.
criticism to be made there. He didn't really make those good arguments, but they do exist. But instead, we've now entered the true area where we're just talking partisan nonsense and kind of taking advantage of the fact that a lot of people don't even really know what left and right really is. The basis behind the origin story of what we call left versus right is really just this concept that came kind of at the dawn between the Enlightenment and the Victorian era, where the question was whether or not you believe the monarchy should still maintain some level of private ownership of government, with the people believing that that should be the case being to the right of the monarchy and the people not believing that being to the left. Which then, as time went on and liberalism kind of became the more dominant ideology, especially into the 1800s, the concept of left and right more evolved towards the idea of just private ownership in general being kind of a right-wing concept, and public or collective ownership being more of the left-wing concept. That's really the basics of what it means. A bit of an oversimplification, but just about everything else about left versus right can stem from that. And because of that, the closest thing to right-wing today is really just free marketeering. If you believe in the free market and private ownership of the means of production, and believe in private property rights, then you are effectively a right-winger. There's a lot more to it than that, and then there's the cultural aspect, but that's a whole other can of worms because there's certain cultures that work with the free market and certain cultures that don't. And to try and imply that, like Second Thought is doing here, is completely insane, because the free market is one thing that the right has absolutely delivered on. Nearly all economic growth in the last 200 years, at least in an empirical sense, can be directly attributed to what the right is offering. Which then brings the question, okay, why this obfuscation? Well, honestly, I kind of suspect that this is just a case of him pretending to not understand things. Second Thought, being a commie, should know, or at least ought to know, or has interacted with the right enough to understand that he is massively strawmanning what the difference is between the right and the left. The big thing being ignored here is that if we're going to talk about far-right regimes, we're kind of ignoring the fact that based on how leftist progressive today view the right wing, nearly everything from the 1800s in nearly every country would be considered far right. And yet we're instead just kind of focusing on this idea that right wing is when bad thing, right wing is when newtsy, and that's it. And especially the bit about radical violence and how that being the only way to change things. That's something that actually comes from the left. Not the general left like the DNC, most of them aren't violent. I mean more from the communists, because their regimes do pretty much exactly the same thing as actual fascist regimes did. North Korea did the same thing, China under Mao Zedong did the same thing, and Stalin did the same thing, and Lenin did the same thing. Is Second Thought going to come out and try and claim those guys as quote-unquote right-wing next? Well, probably not. Again, he's probably just projecting, which shows itself in the next clip.
When the far right gets into power, their first order of business is cutting workers' rights and union busting and making the bosses happy. And if people starve, they don't care about the breadlines. But people do. We do. When fascists promise to help workers and things don't get better, when reality doesn't match up to the campaign promises, the only thing left for the fascist right is violent escalation.
So one thing I should point out here is that a valid argument Second Thought is making is that he is at least providing some criticism of fascism as it actually existed in history. And this wouldn't even be that bad of a video if he didn't Mott and Bailey between that and trying to completely blanket the entire idea of right wing as being equivalent to fascist regimes. As I pointed out earlier, a big thing going on here is just a Mott and Bailey fallacy. When you realize he's dancing between two very different arguments, which is a historical definition of fascism based on how fascist regimes actually operated, and a more general, oh, Newtsyism is when borders argument, then well, that's when the obvious dishonesty starts to show its face. In this case, yes, fascist regimes largely failed to provide the economic benefits that they promised. Historically, fascist regimes anyway. This is one of the reasons why, me personally, I'm a right-wing libertarian, and am deeply suspicious and critical of any kind of right-wing authoritarian, highly statist control of the economy, mainly because it just doesn't actually make any sense. They end up committing the same errors of economic illiteracy as the commies do. Which, wait a minute, oh yeah, that's right, Second Thought is a communist. And he's whining about red lines in mid-1900s Germany. Never mind the famine of Mao Zedong under communism, which was arguably 1,000 times worse. That's an important takeaway from Second Thought's video, and what's kind of so amazing about watching it is it just oozes projection. Just about every accusation he makes is in a confession from his own ideology. When you listen to his arguments, and keep in mind that Second Thought is a total commie and actually has a podcast with other commies. He's part of the Deprogram, which is an outright, unapologetic, tanky podcast. The absurdity of these arguments really just comes to light. Because what he's really doing here is he's criticizing fascism based on the same tenets of reality that can also be used to criticize communism. And so it's just an unintentional self-own. But going back to the Motte and Bailey element, he then doubles down on that further. Let's move on to the next clip.
Propaganda wasn't just beamed into the minds of ordinary people, turning them into ethno-nationalists. The state and the population became entangled in their mutually reinforcing desires to ignore everything getting worse around them by finding common pleasure in living out violent fantasies. Things don't improve, but at least someone is doing something. It's why so many Trump supporters today believe he's kept his promises. Groceries aren't less expensive. Electricity costs haven't been slashed in half. America's reputation is in the trash.
Congress, take action. It's time to pass the Clarity Act now.
Oh, come on. Honestly, this looks really cute. But I'm gonna skip it. The US's reputation is in the trash. Which allies? Again, motherfucker isn't even trying. None of these are arguments. These are all just headlines. Pluralities in Germany and France. Alright. Who the hell cares about Germany and France? And a majority of Canadians. Canadians. The ones who are murdering their own people. Amazing. These are nobody nations. Since when has France done anything? Since when has Germany done anything? Germany literally shut down their freaking nuclear reactors to open up coal plants. Who cares about these people? France has turned into a third world nation. The issue is this only looks at matters from a very specific lens that is incredibly disingenuous. What about other countries? What about South American countries? What about the Arab countries? What about Asia?
Of course, going after every brown person in the country wasn't going to help with any of that.
So yeah, as we can see, it's just further and further entering.
Country wasn't going to is in the trash. Of course, going after every brown person in the country wasn't going to help with any of that.
As a brown man, I am offended. I am offended at the retardation of this individual. Like, immigrants don't come in all colors. Like, we haven't deported countless white people and Asians as well. And you know what? He specifically said brown. So that's actually excluding black people. That's actually excluding Africans. And we've deported a lot of Africans.
So yeah, as we can see, it's just further and further entering into the world of projection. Living out violent fantasies while the economy doesn't improve. What is that? Oh, that's right, that's nearly every single communist regime ever. That's what Mao Zedong did, that's what Pol Pot did, that's what Kim Il-sung did, and that's what Lenin and Stalin did. It is very interesting how communists can't actually criticize these regimes without also incriminating the communist regimes of the past. And part of this, the problem really is that fascism isn't actually a right-wing ideology, rather it's an authoritarian centrist ideology. It is much closer ideologically to Stalin than any commie would like to admit, because ultimately what fascism did, as in actual fascist regimes historically, their idea of the economy was corporatism and state ownership of the means of production. Not as extreme as the outright Marxist-Leninist states did, in that the fascist states still tried to maintain kind of a facade of private ownership, but still under strong state regulation and control, you know, kind of like the CCP today, which by the way, that's a subject for another video, how the Chinese Communist Party is actually just a neo-fascist regime. But anyway, the important takeaway here is that the things he's complaining about in terms of economics, they're not right-wing economics. And also that is the...
Yeah, that's why they were called the Nationalist Socialist Party. They weren't quite far Marxist enough to be full-on communist, but they were socialists.
Reason why Trump's policies have not done as well as people were hoping. Because the main issue with Orange Man is that he has not actually meaningfully reduced state spending. He's pretty much just another neoconservative at this point. And so naturally, of course, the inflation rate has yet to actually go back to what it was under his first term. It's not because he's a literal newtsie, but rather the reason this is happening is because of the Fed and the typical two-party scam, where neither of them actually do anything about the out-of-control spending. Like Trump will float the idea of reducing the government and float the idea of removing the income tax for anybody earning under 100K, which would be nice, but then he doesn't actually do it. But that is a socialist policy. That is a failure due to socialism, not because of him being a bad mustache man. But anyways, there's one more clip I want to go over here, and it's actually the most important and the one I'd like to wrap things up on.
But MAGA supporters see the zip ties and the chains and the planes and the dead protesters, and for a moment, that relieves the anxiety that there's nothing to be done about their problems.
True, that's exactly how it works. Yep. You see, he can get into the minds of these MAGA scum. He knows the inner mechanisms of their mind. He knows exactly what they're thinking.
Except that little moment where the anxiety is gone doesn't last forever. Seymour describes this like killing a spider. For an arachnophobe, no amount of killing spiders ever cures the fear.
No matter how much I kill the spiders, I'm still afraid of spider. No matter how much I destroy immigrant, I still afraid immigrant.
For an ethno-nationalist, no amount of violence is ever going to be enough. The more people are brutalized by ICE, the more it's apparent that it doesn't solve anything, the more the anxiety builds and the need for violence comes back. Under the Nazis, the same thing was true.
So this is very interesting because it's actually the only part of the video that Second Thought is kind of correct on. But he's correct for a reason that he probably doesn't want to be. The reason an arachnophobe doesn't become less arachnophobic after killing a spider in their home is because spiders are still able to get into their home. Likewise, simply removing illegal immigrants without really fixing what's causing a lot of uneducated third worlders to flood the country does very little. I mean, if you have really, really strong border control, you can kind of manage it that way, but that doesn't really touch on the incentives. You see, what's happened here is that Second Thought has accidentally just made an argument for freedom of association. Because immigration, by and large, isn't really that big of an issue. Some immigrants are productive and some are not. Most of them, on average, are productive. That is assuming that the policy isn't infinity welfare to infinity bemollients. And so the issue isn't immigration, but rather the issue is socialism. The DNC in particular has been enticing uneducated, unskilled, low IQ immigration via welfare scams. Oh, come here, we'll take care of you. And in the United States especially, the scam is come here, have an anchor baby, and through that anchor baby you can then funnel a generous amount of welfare. Quite a lot of welfare, actually. It's kind of ridiculous how much welfare an anchor baby is eligible for. But it technically kind of makes sense because if that baby is born into the United States, they're a US citizen and they become eligible for all of these programs. And that's a problem because that means that people don't have free association when it comes to the enrollment of these programs. You can have a welfare system and it can work within a free market. But the thing is, it actually needs to be a mutually accepted covenant. But because the social safety net in the United States does not work that way, and instead it's just kind of open to anybody who manages to get in, that is what encourages so much unskilled immigration. Because it gets immigrants coming in for the wrong reasons. The correct reasons, when immigrants come to actually work, they are generally beneficial to society. The evidence of that is pretty strong. The issue happens when they come in to be non-productive, mooch off the welfare system, and then vote for more socialism. That's when it becomes a problem. And many United States citizens see that and are aware of the grift. And so a lot of what we're seeing isn't so much ethno-nationalism as it is more just people being ticked off that they don't have freedom of association. You have people coming in who get to mooch off of the system, and you're not allowed based on the current laws to exclude them from your life, and so people don't really have much any other recourse. Which brings me to a very important point that a lot of people won't even notice when they watch this kind of video, which is how Second Thought, and really commies in general, a huge grift that they like to pull is they like to pretend to believe in open borders for the same reason reasons that open borders libertarians believe in open borders. But they very much do not actually believe that. In open borders libertarian, the argument is basically that statist borders are bad because the way that the state has gained the control of that land is aggressive and therefore illegitimate. So in other words, the open borders policy, it's really just more of an abolish the state policy, which communists absolutely do not believe in. They very much want to keep the state system because the basis of communism is state ownership of the means of production. That is what collective ownership of the means of production is. That is what collective ownership of the economy is. It necessitates a level of state control and command economy. You cannot get around that. And so they don't want to get rid of a state border in the same way that a left Rothbardian would want to get rid of the state border. They want to keep the state in all the jurisdiction. So why is it then that they argue for open immigration? Well, again, because they want to keep the open enrollment into their socialist policies. So it's not so much that they believe in open borders, but rather they believe in global communism and hegemonic control. Or in other words, they believe in basically building a cage around the entire planet. They will of course try to deny that, but that is where the logical conclusions of their beliefs tend to go. Because I mean, yeah, sure, pedantically you could say there's no borders if you build a cage around the entire planet, because the planet is a sphere, but that's obviously not anything to do with freedom, and is very much not respecting anybody's natural rights. And as for the rest of Second Thought's video, it's pretty much just him further fear-mongering on ICE, pretending to hold an open borders position based on principles he doesn't actually believe, and implying that ICE will one day turn on the citizens and evolve into this sort of Holocaust 2.0, and that they will start committing genocide on all the Browns any day now. I will not attempt to refute this. I will just simply calmly state that that's not going to happen, and if you don't believe me, then you can bookmark this video and watch it again once Orange Man's term is over, and you will have seen that it didn't happen. What I'm going to do instead is just wrap things up by going over the question asked at the start. The reason that communists can't stop falsely accusing everyone of being a Nazi is more than just thinly veiled justification of violent rhetoric against the targets they don't like. What's really going on here is that people who are at fault for a problem need to invent false reasons for why the problem exists. Socialists do not want to admit that the reason for the immigration crisis is largely due to socialist policies. And they also really don't want to admit to the similarities between the communist regimes of the past and the fascist regimes of the past. And so their only answer to that, in order to kind of defend their ideology, is to these intentional Motte and Bailey fallacies where they muddy the waters of what specifically fascism even is. They have to lie about it and lie about the problems that it caused and lie about why it caused those problems, because if they don't lie about it, then it becomes very obvious that what they're offering is just fascism red version. Socialist policies have completely failed to produce the economic growth that they have promised. And progressive activism has only just further cemented this identity politics and collective hatred that a lot of ethnicities have for each other these days, sadly enough. With the equity movement and woke ideology being one of the biggest failures of our time. And so the only answer the communists have to this is to just blame something else. Falsely accuse anybody who's loosely on the right of being lay bad mustache man, loosely draw associations with the problems of the day to fascist regimes of the past, equivocate between two very different definitions of what fascism even is, and presto, capitalism is one bad thing, socialism is one good thing. Communists can't possibly be responsible for any bad thing because, you know, just look at the definition. It's one good thing, not one bad thing. That is effectively what they're arguing with these false accusations of everyone being a Nazi. It's not just projection, and it's not just a way for them to justify Antifa violence, but rather what they are doing here is a disingenuous tactic for them to avoid any kind of responsibility for when their policies fail. And on that note, I will end the video. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support me, you can again do so on Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, or by becoming a member of the channel, and doing those last two will get you priority in my QA videos. Or alternatively, you can buy some merch, of which I do have a merch store, and here's a QR code right here. But yeah, thanks again for watching. That is all. Till next time.
I don't know how he puts up with these people. The amount of patience to be able to watch that is insane. I was literally losing my mind. Alright, so the stream has now come to 1 hour and 45 minutes. It is not long before I have to go. So I'm thinking we should just watch some video game news real quick. Find out what's going on in the world of video games entertainment. Thankfully, Spawnwave always has something good.
So there's been an elephant in the room for the last week or so now with Sony. And while a lot of this has focused in on the idea of physical media going away, there are multiple reasons why people are frustrated by this. So it's just the idea of the collector's mentality, the ability to have more choices in the marketplace, but also, right now, the digital side of things, it's just not ready for this. Specifically, everything being funneled to a singular closed store ecosystem. It just isn't. Physical media does have a purpose, even if you just buy digital, in that it does kind of balance out the market, but also it's kind of a scapegoat or just a way for Sony to avoid what I think could be heading their way, depending on how they handle the PlayStation 6. And that's some pretty significant regulation, but I wanted to go over some of that here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. So as of now, Sony will be discontinuing, or they're going to slow down or basically stop production of Blu-ray discs for the PlayStation 5 and then the PlayStation 6, January 2028. Apparently, there will be a way for games that already exist to get reprints or just more discs, but Sony will be drastically reducing their production to the point where no new games will be getting pressed into disc format and then released onto Best Buy or Walmart or GameStop, wherever, right? And this, of course, has led to a lot of backlash because it will just be an all-digital future starting much sooner than I think any of us, at least that I was anticipating. I thought we had one more generation with the PlayStation 6 system, and at least at the time of this recording, Sony seems pretty dug in. So, of course, it makes people wonder, all right, if they're really going to go through with this, what does that exactly mean for ownership or just digital consumer rights? Because that, to me, is the big elephant in the room right now, outside of Sony just pretending nothing's happening online as they post over and over again, telling you about a fight stick or whatever other game. But the idea of buying a digital product or digital good and having some sort of singular ownership over that product. Now, here's the thing. I think there's like semantics where people are just being silly with it and they go, well, you don't actually own what's on that disc. And I feel like that's pretty obvious. So let's say you buy the new Gears of War game coming up, all right? I think we all know that you don't own the Gears of War franchise when you buy Gears E-Day or what have you. No, I think most of us understand that. But that's kind of what's thrown around. It's like, you don't actually own, Gears E-Day then. It's like, no, I own the singular product there, the game, the disc that has the game on it, which means then I can sell it, I can trade it in, I can lend it to a friend, I can take the disc, pop it in, and put it on a different account, like move it to another PlayStation. So right now with the digital marketplace, everything is indeed locked down quite heavily with DRM in the sense.
Yeah, you don't actually own the game, right? You own a copy of the game. And now you are free to do with that copy whatever you deem necessary.
It's that if you buy it from Sony, in this case the PlayStation 5, you go on the digital marketplace, it's just linked to an account. So even further, if there's a hack or somebody is able to steal your account or identity theft, which we're seeing more and more accounts of this as it happens and we go along, then you will lose your entire library of purchases. Whereas it's bad enough that it happens because you would lose save data, you would lose your trophies, maybe there'd be payment information, you have to cancel a credit card, it's like a whole thing. But if you had your games that were all physical, you could then just say, you know what, I guess I'm making a new account, and then you just, go through and install every game. Yes, it'll take time, but at least it's there as something that is not completely tied to a digital signature with your account. Okay, so the aspect here, though, again, people will talk about the idea that there's nothing on these cartridge or a disc, and I don't really know where that necessarily comes from either, since like Saros does have a Gold Master on the disc. You don't have to be connected to the internet to play it. Star Fox, same deal. Like, there's just a Gold Master on the cartridge. Yes, there are updates that you can pull down for day one, and most times it's going to give you a better experience. But for the most part, I mean, they're shipping a game that is set up to be played outright from the disc or the cartridge, and this gets kind of murky, I think, for people because there are instances where you have some information on a disc and then you have to download the rest, or you have a game key card and then you have to download all of it. But there are cases, and I mean, I'd say on the PS5, it's like 70% or so that's just solely on the disc and is not reliant for a significant amount of information to be pulled to then play the game. And I think on the Switch too, we're seeing more and more just like true physical copies happen. And I think it's getting closer to like 50% right now. It was at one point it was overwhelming in terms of game key cards. I think we're getting closer to half and half currently. But I think it's sort of the way that these companies right now sort of pitch the digital purchase to us, because it is indeed shown kind of as like you're buying to own something. And this has already come up completely in like different states I know that are going over. In California had a whole thing with it when it comes down to they show you buy or purchase next to the digital good, but really you're getting a revocable license added to your account, and then you're able to download the title. But technically, yes, they can take the game out of your library if they want. They can change and alter the game at any time, and that happens pretty frequently with different updates. See, there is something to having a 1.0 Goldmaster on a cartridge or a disc from day one, because how many times do games completely change for over the course of years? Cyberpunk being a big example that I'm sure many people use, where it's kind of a busted mess when it first came out, but if you have that original disc, you can still go back and look at it. But as we've gone along, there have been updates after update after update, and the game has completely shifted since then, so that, yes, game preservation comes into play, but also you do kind of lose just that piece of history. If you do want to show somebody what Cyberpunk was like originally, you would be able to install it, say, off of the disc and show them a pretty busted version of the game, but there is still some, I'd say, novelty in that, okay? The point is, you lose a lot of control around the media that you're buying then when it is just digital. The other thing that that comes up, again, I know the buying, the selling, the trading. Unfortunately, I think there was a path to having an answer to that, and it just got all messed up. That was the whole NFT thing that was happening. The idea, like just the core concept was good. I think it was correct, and I think it would have played out really, really well for consumers, especially with the idea of having a unique token that's digitized, that is decentralized and not tracked by any one company necessarily, for a digital good to just kind of follow you around or be closer to a physical product that you would hold in your hands. Unfortunately, everything got messed up with, I don't know, PNGs of apes, whatever else, and it was just, it ended up looking very scammy and money laundering. It looked bad.
The 2025 Ford Maverick Hybrid truck, now featuring available all-wheel drive with an
So with all that happening and the hundreds of thousands of dollars getting thrown around for it, millions even, a lot of people ended up backing off of that, and it's just kind of tainted at this point, the idea of NFT, or at least the name, like the NFT, non-fungible token. But the idea was good, and unfortunately, we kind of lost it. We sort of ruined it, you know. This is the way it goes, especially when large amounts of money gets involved with something like that. Because my thing with this is, if there was a way to have a non-fungible token, we'll say, but at least a unique ID for a digitized good that is attached to an account you have, it could be like some wallet or whatever, but you're able to track it just as you, not with Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo or Valve or Epic or whatever having to track it for you, I think that would be a much better spot for a digital marketplace to be in. Because when you have this digital marketplace that is closed and everything is focused on it, that being with Sony, as they're pushing us in that direction right now, post January 2028, you do start to come up with the monopoly talk, and that's where regulators would probably get involved, and some have already been looking at this right now. And even before this, Sony has been hammered with tons of lawsuits. Yes, most of them are class action lawsuits, so Sony's strategy is to pay out millions of dollars and then just move on. But I feel like they will get more plentiful and definitely more severe if we are in a position where Sony really doesn't do a lot to overhaul the idea of buying digital goods from them, and you're only left with, oh, I'll go to the store and buy a code in a box that, to be frank, I don't think many of these retail stores are going to care about, like, stocking much longer. Like, it doesn't seem like something that would, of course, translate into a used product, right? So there are many retail stores that maybe sell used games. Makes no sense. Even discounting some of them, I don't think Sony is necessarily going to. Like, their first-party games are going to probably stay kind of like how Nintendo treats it, but again, there is a used version of a game key card technically. But I think you're going to see Sony push in the direction of their games retain high value, and they get a significantly better cut, 100%, than if they had to put their first-party games on retail shelves and lose upwards of 30%. But the other thing that I've thought about, these digital stores are pretty young still. I think people tend to forget that. It was midway through the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 generation that we had the ability to start buying full games, not like Xbox Live Arcade or any of the PlayStation Network, like smaller titles. This was like Assassin's Creed, and I feel like at that time, it was 2010, we started to see this roll out, and obviously the light bulb went off in a lot of investors' heads. It's like, whoa, you can just send them the game without having to actually send them the game. You can just digitize and just teleport it to them, right? And so obviously the wheels start to turn, the money starts flowing in their mind, and it did take a while to get to this point at least. But we've been building our libraries for quite some time, and I'm noticing a pattern here when these companies tell us that a store is shutting down. Let's see if you can spot it, okay? So this right here is the announcement on PlayStation Blog for PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 3 stores shutting down. Now, we knew this was coming. They told us 5 years ago. They tried to shut it down, and there was backlash, and they said, you know what, we'll leave it up, because it probably didn't matter that much if it was down or up, whatever, like in terms of the storefronts. It was more about the payment processing, and they did some stuff where they disabled portions of it, and you had to do some weird workabouts to get money into your wallet and then buy games on the storefronts. But people were still buying them, and we've been building up a digital library for quite some time. And yeah, that does include Vita and PS3 games. So you can see here that they do talk about this shutting down, and they say that means new content purchases will no longer be possible once the PlayStation Store closes on these devices. To ease the transition, players will still be able to download previously purchased content after closing date for the foreseeable future. So not indefinitely, just the foreseeable future. And I was like, man, I've heard that somewhere before. Here's Nintendo's their announcement, or their Q&A, the discontinuation of the 3DS and the Wii U. And it says here, for the eShop closure, even after March 27th, 2023, and for the foreseeable future, it will still be possible to re-download games and DLC and receive software updates on Wii U and Nintendo 3DS family of systems. So you see kind of the language being used here, as in they don't want to be definitive with the idea of you being able to re-download your purchases, like just outright forever. I do wonder if we will have something happen, or we get to a point where they go, man, it's been 25 years, or it's been 20 years, or something like that, and they go, yeah, I think that's enough for re-downloads. And that, I think, is something that is in the back of people's minds with this whole the whole digital era that's now rapidly accelerating, coming towards us. Again, I thought we had another generation, but now we have to really start looking at the fine print that's being presented by these different companies. And when I see that, all that's like yelling to me is, oh, okay, there might be a time where you can't re-download your purchases anymore. And we're just talking about games, but we just had a situation where like 500 some odd purchased digital movies were taken out of people's libraries because there was some dispute between Sony and another company. And the answer was, okay, they're just out of your library. Like, that was it. No refunds or nothing to like meet you halfway. It's like, no, they're just gone. And I think people realize then and there, they're like, oh, wow, it really is just like that, huh? Just boom, snap of the finger and it's gone. There's no repercussions, nothing. Yeah, so that's the thing. There are like differences in terms of having a disc with a copy of the game on it physically versus having an entitlement attached to your account that, yes, can technically be revoked at any time. And it just feels like currently Sony is just not ready for this future that they're pitching that's coming up pretty quick for the PlayStation 6 here we think next holiday, 2027. If they really don't have an answer for many of these different questions around digital ownership or trading or reselling your games, or is this something that has to be attached to an account? Is there a version that can be DRM free? Like with for PC, it's open. You can go to GOG and buy a game, and you can actually burn it. One of the fun things I see people do, they burn it to CDs because it's DRM free, and you just have a copy of the game that you can use. Like that's it. Like you put it in your disk drive and install it directly from it. Steam has something similar you can do with certain titles that don't have like overreaching DRM attached to it. People are just burning them to CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays and making a nice little collection on the shelf because you can do that. But with a closed ecosystem like for Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo, I mean, come on, right? So a lot of things to figure out here. I just don't think Sony's ready, but they're gonna do this. They got their fingers in their ears and they're just trying to push through the storm right now. We'll see how long they're able to hold up though, because man, people are after them online right now. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. Your thoughts about the idea of this all digital future happening pretty quickly, and how would Sony be able to even prepare for that when it comes to digital purchases, or really just digital entitlements at this time. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Yep, that'd be crazy. Alright, so unfortunately, the time is now. I must leave. I didn't make as much progress as I wanted to, but progress is progress. That's all for today. I've been streaming for 2 hours. I gotta go eat something. I gotta go do some errands. And thanks for watching. If you're out there and you're receiving this broadcast, good night.